Hello, and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about murders and so much more. We will talk about anything strange, anything that goes bump in the night, and pretty much anything that amuses us.
And on that note, we need to mention that this podcast is not safe for work or delicate ears, so do be discerning who you listen to it with.
We also want to let you know that you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so look for us there.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a writer, mom, wife, student, procrastinator, and you can find me at thewarriormuse.com.
My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer, an avid reader, an organizer extraordinaire, a mom to kids, cats, and a dog, and I call bullshit when I see it.
Hi!
Yay, hi!
Hi! We are here with Kim Olgren today. How has your week been?
I don't remember.
Wow.
It was either that good or that bad.
How has your week been, Kim? You had an injury.
Yeah, I'm a little gimpy and on crutches right now. Apparently fractured my ankle, and apparently my car windshield was hit by, I don't know, a stray golf ball or a rock or something. So I got to get a windshield replacement now too. So it's been a banner week over here.
Yay!
I saw the picture on Facebook of the hole in the windshield. It is a very perfect circle.
Uh-huh.
That
Is
looks like
not weird.
It looks like a golf ball or a baseball to me.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that's what it looks like to me. The strange part is the car is parked in the driveway facing the garage door.
So it bounced, so golf ball.
So it must have, August my husband plays golf, and he's like, well, it didn't bounce off the roof. It had to come like straight down on the car, bounced off the car, rolled down the driveway into the street, then down the street, because we can't find any evidence of anything that could have caused that damage.
Ah, rude.
So
yeah, that is rude.
I know, right?
I had somebody up the street. I have a neighbor, and her one of her kiddos, I guess, lost control coming down the hill because we kind of live at the bottom of a hill in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And her little guy slammed into the side of my Jeep Liberty, my old one. This is years ago. And we got home from the drive-in in Pueblo in the middle of the night, and there's a note.
Oh.
And I'm just looking at it going, my Jeep, there was a boy-sized dent in my door.
Oh.
It was sad because I love that Jeep. But yeah, they left a note and they were like, he will make good on this. And wow, of course. Yeah. But
that sounds like Looney Tunes with the boy-sized dent.
I know. I'm like, I wish I'd seen it. Now I have dash cams, but they don't record sideways. So it wouldn't have worked. It records front and back.
Yeah, this poor car just had bad luck. We had it for about a week before somebody hit us in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And then we've had it for just under a year, I think. And now it's been hit by a golf ball or something. I'm like, this doesn't bode well.
You know what? I got rid of a vehicle because of that luck. I had another Liberty, and it was bright blue. And I was supposed to be going to meet a previous boss. They were doing a thing up at one of the ski resorts. And so I was driving up to the ski resort. And first I'm driving along, and some dude in a giant pickup truck. Now, bear in mind, I was in a giant Liberty. It was a really big year. And he didn't see me. So he's changing lanes, and I see him changing lanes at me, coming at me from the side, but I'm pinned in because it was heavy traffic. So I eased up like completely on the bumper of the person in front of me, but I couldn't get over. And so he ended up side swiping and scraping along the back of my vehicle. So I signal, right, because he's hit me, to move over. I move over. He just keeps going. So then I get back on the road, get in front of him, motion at him to go over to the side of the road. He just kept driving. He never looked at me. There was this tiny little woman in the seat next to him, like his wife. And like, she kind of glanced over at me, but no awareness at all, like that he'd hit me. So I ended up just calling him in, but he had Wyoming plates. So nothing ever happened because of it. So anyway, then I get back on the road, a little shaken, right? This guy totally sideswiped me. I had to control the car because it was the back of my vehicle. And then a paint cap, like from the big paint buckets, came flying off a truck and slammed into my windshield. And I pulled over and I texted the boss I wasn't coming, and I turned around and went home, and Jeff took me out to barbecue because I was like, I can't do this.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Because I have fatal car accident induced PTSD. So that was just, and it had already been re-triggered by an accident. In that same vehicle of a guy who backed in his Porsche, backed out of a parking spot into the rear side of my vehicle while I was driving down the aisle, right? And then he won the case because he was actually an insurance rep. And he claimed, because we had damage on the front of that vehicle because a cement truck had backed up into our vehicle at one point. They'd taken complete credit. They'd paid to fix it, but we had left. They fixed our grill, but they left the bumper because we said, don't worry about it. We're replacing it anyway. We want a different color. So it still had a scar there. So that's what they used. And my insurance company sucked that bad that they felt I hit him from the front.
Wow.
So you see why I got rid of that vehicle?
Oh, yeah.
I was having panic attacks just thinking about driving places after that. My husband was like, that's it. And he sold it and he replaced it.
That's a good husband.
That is a good husband.
Yeah.
But because I was having the full-blown PTSD from after the initial accident again. So yeah, I was like, bad luck vehicle. People keep hitting it. And it was bright blue. That was the thing that killed me. Like bright blue. It was so visible. Did they think it was the sky?
I thought it was the Smurfmobile.
Road.
I don't know.
All right. So Kim, why don't you introduce yourself to our listening audience?
So I'm Kim Olgren. I am the author of Flip to Jillian McElroy Mystery. It is a cozy mystery about a gal who flips houses, and she's pretty spunky and snarky, if you ask me. But that's her. But it's a cozy mystery, and it's a fun, fast read. So I really enjoyed writing that. But I also have an interest in horror and the paranormal and whatnot. So that's why I'm here today.
All right. Yeah, because you listen. Listen to the podcast already.
I do. I listen to the podcast. I am a big fan of the podcast, actually. And what I'm going to be talking about shadow people today.
Yay. I've got a creepy one too.
You do?
I'm all murder,
which is funny.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Every
sorry.
once
no
in a while,
food
you're
crimes.
the murdery one.
Yeah, I'm the murdery one today. Well, yes, this one is a murder. It's several murders. It's not just one, it's several.
It's all good for you.
There's some pretty weird stuff out there when it comes to murders.
Oh, yeah. There will never be a shortage because humans.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because humans.
Yes. All right. So usually we get started pretty fast when we have a guest.
We do.
So,
all right.
You or I are going first.
Oh.
Since Kim gets sandwiched.
Oh, that's right. Do you want me to go first with the...
Go ahead. Do the Redhead Murders. Wait, yeah.
Yeah. Redhead Murders. So today I'm going to talk about the Redhead Murders, and my sources were insider.com, which has true crime cold cases of some, and of course, Wikipedia, knoxnews.com, a couple of newspapers. So what happened was, sadly, as you would not, you would expect the Redhead Murders, you would expect there's a redhead murdering someone, but it's not, it's the other way around.
It doesn't work quite like race normally does with serial murders.
No. So in the 80s and it possibly into the 90s, the bodies of redheaded women were found mostly off of highways. They were found in Memphis, Jellicoe, Ashland City, and Greenville, Tennessee, as well as Kentucky, Mississippi, Arkansas. There's one they say in Pennsylvania. I don't think that one is related, and West Virginia. So they were all found near major highways. The police suspect that the women were either hitchhiking or involved in the sex trade, although a couple don't fit that profile either. They were informally called the Bible Belt. It's been called the Bible Belt murders because of where they took place. But that was, I learned later, there was a sociology class that did or a criminal justice class that did a profile of these cases. And they were the ones who nicknamed it the Bible Belt murderer. Everybody else calls it the Redhead murderer.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Sorry, students.
Forget you.
So we go from October of 78 to possibly one in 92. There are 6 to 11 victims. Only 4 of the victims have been identified. So from the April 1985 article. The five initial states got together and asked for the FBI's involvement to determine if this was the work of a serial killer. And they're kind of like, oh, we don't know. Maybe. That I'm like, yay. I'm so happy about that. But with all these unidentified women being killed, the people in charge in Tennessee don't want it to be. They said it was not a serial murderer.
They never want it to be a serial murderer.
They said there were similarities, but too many differences. So they were all white females. They were almost all redheads. I think there was one brunette. The rest are all redheads.
Was it like auburn?
Did she have red highlights? It's called, yes, there was one with red highlights.
There you go.
All were found off a major highway. Most of them were strangled. Some were clothed. Some were nude. Some had engaged in sex before being killed. And all that was found of one body was a severed head and some bones.
Oh,
yeah.
What was it, a redheaded head?
It was a redheaded head.
Okay.
I don't know if it was painted. There was a little note. So the focus of the investigation, they decided to try to identify the victims before searching for the culprit. I'm going to assume that makes sense to someone. So, Littleton, West Virginia, February 13th, 1983. This is a hell of a way to kick off the Valentine's Day weekend. The naked body of a white auburn-haired female was discovered staged off Route 250. And they know it was staged because it had snowed. So there was snow under the body, but not on top of the body. There were footprints. There were tire tracks. I'm like, you got all that and nothing.
There was a little piece of paper with a plan of how to lay the body out.
She had died 2 days prior to being discovered and was not the victim of sexual assault. They think that she was 35 to 45 years old. And there's some question about whether or not she fits the pattern because of the elaborate staging. And she was a little bit older.
That is very different. Yeah.
So that one is questionable. Near West Memphis, Arkansas, on September 16th, 1984, a woman's body wearing only a sweater was found off of I-40. She was ID'd in 1985, about 9 months later, as Lisa Nichols. Apparently, sometimes she went as Lisa Jarvis, from West Virginia. She was identified by a couple from Florida who had allowed her to stay in their home for some time, but they verified her ID through fingerprints.
Okay.
So no family, no nothing. That's the amazing thing about all these women. They've not been able to connect several of these unidentified bodies to a family. Nobody has come forward saying this person is missing.
So it makes sense why they think it might be in sex trade involved or something like that.
In Jellicoe, which I think is a jaunty name to say, Jellicoe, Tennessee, the bound body of a woman was found down an embankment from I-75. She had been dead for approximately 72 hours before the body was found. They suspected she was between 17 to 25 years of age, possibly as old as 30. She was killed by strangulation, found fully clothed, and wrapped in a blanket that had traces of seminal fluids, which really makes me want to make the Letterkenny joke about the Florida State seminal vesicles. Now that I can go on with the rest of what I have to say.
I mean, frankly, blankets probably not uncommon for them to have some seminal fluids on them.
And she was 10 to 12 weeks pregnant when she was murdered. Now, so that was in 1985. In September of 2018, the Shelby County Sheriff's ID'd her as 21-year-old Tina Marie McKinney Farmer from Indiana. She was last seen with a trucker who was headed for Kentucky. She'd been reported missing in 85, but wait for it, she wasn't entered into any databases.
Of course not.
So they looked for her near where she went missing, but didn't. I don't know if
they assumed she was a runaway or like a runaway from her life.
Yes, but they didn't put her in any databases in other states. And apparently that's not unusual. No. In 2019, yet one more year later, DNA evidence ID'd convicted kidnapper Jerry Leon Johns as the culprit. Now, he had already died in prison in 2015. He was convicted in 1987 of kidnapping and assault on a woman named Linda Shack, who survived being bound, strangled, and left for dead in a storm drain off I-40. So they were able DNA matching between the two. And the grand jury said, now to me, I'm like, really, you convened a grand jury for this? He's dead, but they convened the grand jury to say, yes, if he was alive, we would try him. We believe he's guilty of this crime, and we would try him for it. Okay.
Yeah, it gives you answers, I guess.
Yes. So Olive Branch, Mississippi, January 1985. This Olive Branch is just south of Memphis, which we were talking about, West Memphis. So this is not far from there. The body of a 20 to 35-year-old female, Redhead, was found on the side of Highway 78. Evidence shows she may have been sexually assaulted, and the cause of death was ligature strangulation. This one is not always linked to the Redhead murders, but I don't see why not, because what more do you need to link it? Strangled, dead, Redhead. Pleasant View, Tennessee, March 31st, 1985. The skeletonized body of a red-haired female was found off I-24. Officials think she died 3 to 5 months earlier. This body was clothed, and she was believed to be between 31 and 40 years old. Gray, Kentucky, on April of 1985, the body of a red-haired woman was found inside a refrigerator near Route 25. Death by suffocation. Now, this was a Jane Doe.
In the refrigerator?
500 people attended her funeral because this was one of those sleepy, quiet, small towns, and it made a really big splash in the media. The funeral was televised.
It makes me think of Grandma Mazer from the Janet Ivanovich books.
Yes.
Going to
all the funerals.
Food.
So on October 1st of 2018, so again, many years later, Knox County Sheriff announced she'd been positively ID'd as Espy Regina Pilgrim. They did a DNA match between her and her daughter. So her daughter's still alive. Her daughter said her mother went missing when she was 6 weeks old, and they never knew what happened to her.
Oh.
And she had 4 older children besides this infant. Another one near Jellicoe, Tennessee. This is April 3rd, 1985. They're just all popping up in the same place. The skeletonized, now this one was, again, a little bit outside of the parameters of what they were expecting. The skeletonized remains of a young girl were found 4 miles south of Jellicoe. They believe that she had been dead between 1 and 4 years because it had been out in the elements for so long. They put her age at 9 to 15 years old. The skull and 31 other bones were recovered. There was a cloth around her neck knotted the same way that Shack's and Farmer's assailant had knotted the cloth around their neck. So what this guy would do, the guy who was in prison but died, he would tear off a piece of their clothing and tie it around their neck to strangle them. And it was the same kind of knot.
Okay.
So, and then in Greenville, Tennessee, April 14th, 1985, the body of a young woman was found approximately 3 to 6 weeks after she'd been killed by blunt force trauma and a possible stab wound. She had been, this was a little confusing to me. She had been 6 to 8 weeks pregnant shortly before she died, but miscarried before death.
Okay.
But I don't know if they're saying the attack caused it or it happened before.
I'm sure they can't definitively.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The police obtained fingerprints, DNA, and dental records. She was not identified until 2018. Yeah, even though they had all that evidence, she was ID'd as 17-year-old Elizabeth Lamont from New Hampshire, who had disappeared from a group home in New Hampshire on April 16th, 1984. And apparently, yes, she had been reported missing. But,
well, that's nice.
Yeah, but authorities believe the victims had either been estranged from or not close to their families, so the disappearances went unnoticed or unreported. There's a factor there. I don't know why this is such a huge factor. The women were found in states they didn't disappear from. So she disappeared in New Hampshire and turned up in Tennessee.
So it really sounds like a trucker.
Exactly. That's what they think.
Okay.
Now, Jerry Johns was definitely a suspect, and they would like to pin some more of these on him, but they don't have the evidence to do it.
Yeah.
It was the same kind of thing, same kind of, I'm making a gesture, which nobody can see. Thank you. Ligature. There was another trucker from Pennsylvania who was questioned and released after he attacked another woman who escaped. But yeah, all the signs point to this is a trucker. He's driving along, probably mostly along I-40. But why? There's just so many unanswered questions because nobody, and we've talked about in the past how the family has to keep badgering the authorities to continue to research the case, to continue to hunt for leads. And apparently with this, because either the family doesn't know what happened to them or they don't have any family, it's like, oh, well, what can we do?
Lovely.
It just doesn't seem to be, I mean, it's the same kind of victim. It's the same kind of methodology, but no, it's certainly not a serial killer. And if it was, he's either dead or slowed down.
Right.
So it just kind of, well, I mean, it's bad enough. So anybody who hasn't ever met me might not know that I'm a redhead.
Like you can't tell from my voice.
But it's bad. Middle Ages, we were burnt as witches just for the crime of having red hair.
Yeah.
So it gets me a little worked up.
A little hot under the collar.
A little hot under I have that redhead temper. So yes, those are the Redhead Murders. And if I will keep my ear out. If I ever hear anything more on them, I will report back.
All right.
If they can ever solve any of the rest of these.
All right. Wow.
I'll stop ranting. I'll stop trying to say Tennessee. Auburns.
Are you ready, Kim?
Sure.
Tell us about some shadow people.
So I'm first going to make a disclaimer because I do not presume to know anything medical or psychological about people who maybe have seen shadow people for those reasons. So if you feel you're overwhelmed by something like this, go seek some professional help.
All right.
Sound advice.
Yes. So shadow people are often, and I say that because shadow people are often said to be hypnopompic or hypnagogic hallucinations, which are hallucinations you have before you fall asleep or right before you wake up, where you see, sense, or feel or hear something in the room with you.
Yeah, I get those all the time, actually.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So sleep paralysis falls under this as well, because one of the legends, like the hag sits on your chest and, keeps you from being able to do anything, paralyzes you. So there's different types. There's the Hat Man. Slender Man often falls under this, and the Boogeyman, of course. Even Jinn, which stem from the Middle Eastern religions, which is genie. Middle Eastern beliefs, which is a genie. But any number of dark beings, or plain old just people that look like shadows, They can be tall, small, have red eyes. There's a bunch of different descriptions, but they all pretty much have in common that it's a shadow. It moves really fast. It can dart from location to location. A lot of times they have red eyes, and there's a heavy, overbearing kind of presence that comes with them. They say they're attracted to electromagnetic energy, like cell phones and televisions and things like that. For me personally, back in 1995-ish, I had my sister and my brother-in-law over, and we were all just kind of sitting around, me and my husband and them were sitting around just kind of chatting, hanging out, at our house. Had a little 3-bedroom rancher, typical rancher with 2 bedrooms at the end of the house and a third one in the front, toward the front of the house in the middle, and across from that was a bathroom. So my sister gets up, heads to the bathroom, comes back pretty spooked, and turns out that she saw something out of the corner of her eye in my bedroom, the master bedroom. And so she kind of poked her head in there to take a peek, and there was a shadow man in there with a hat.
Oh,
you're out.
It was properly dressed.
Yeah, So, and I mean, it's just the outline. It's a shadow person with a hat. So that kind of freaked her out. My sister's a very practical person. So that was kind of weird for her. So that was kind of me. I'd already had encounters with this when I was a kid. So it was and I grew up in a family that it was like, Mom, there's a monster in my room. Go back to bed and shut up.
Yeah.
Stuff it out or shut up and go back to bed. So, so I just kind of kept it to myself, and I talked to my husband about this, and I was like, why do people always put their head under the covers? Because I kept seeing time after time when I started looking into it, because I was like, why am I seeing this? This is stupid. Time after time, people throw the covers over their head to hide from the thing.
Yeah.
Who does that? I'm like, I don't want to lose track of this thing. If it's going to attack me, I want to see it coming so I can try to do something. I don't know what, throw the covers at it. I don't know, but I don't want to lose sight of it.
I'm with you. I want to know where it is and when it's coming at me.
Yeah. I want to know what it's doing there, So, it's and I think that, maybe sometimes they're attached to negative, energy, people who are unbalanced, or there's unbalanced energy in the house kind of thing. But that's just my personal opinion.
Like poltergeists. Poltergeists.
Yeah, like poltergeists, exactly.
And it's often teenage or preteen female energy.
Exactly.
Which is apparently quite negative.
I was just going to say, so then in my teenage years, there was one that used to hang out. There was a street light directly across the street from our house, and I had second floor bedroom window at that point. And there was one that would hang out just outside the circle of light from the street light and stare up at my bedroom window.
Oh.
And it would literally wake me up out of a dead sleep. I would go to my window, and there he'd be, which is, kind of unnerving.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. You had a peeping Tom.
Yes, right? It's kind of like that, yeah. So that was pretty freaky, and that went on for a couple of months until I finally got over that one. But you mentioned the young female energy. So my daughter, as a teenager, started seeing the same sorts of things. So we moved into another house by the time my kids have, gotten a little older and need their own rooms. And so we're now in the house that I live in now. And so my kids and their friends would report stuff in the house all the time, seeing shadow people, things out of the corner of their eye. I'm sure you'd probably had that experience. Almost everybody has, where something darts through the corner of your eye. And you're like, what was that? But and sometimes they're even white. Sometimes they're not even shadows. Sometimes they look like white shadows, if you can imagine that. Sometimes, they're associated with orbs.
Yeah.
Which several people have mentioned seeing in my backyard, in my present house, from inside the house through the window. And I'm like, well, it was this light. It was a reflection. It was this. We live in an aircraft path.
Right.
No, that's not what it was. Okay. So, but I think that even though it's something that's spooky and scary, and it really is, it's unnerving. If it's ever happened to you, where you've actually had like that shadow being looking you in the face, it's really disconcerting.
Yeah.
And you don't know if it's real or if it's not. You just kind of have to deal with it and figure it out. So, and of course, I kind of grew out of it. So I don't have that problem anymore. Where my daughter's, as I mentioned, is kind of a little bit of a hot mess. She still has those experiences because she still has that kind of frame of mind. But I mean, I walked in on my son talking to somebody in his sleep, and I woke up and he said, "Oh, you made it disappear." Like, what? I made what disappear? So yeah, it's really interesting, the stories that they come out with on this. And there was I don't know if you're familiar with Coast to Coast Radio.
Yeah.
So I can't remember his name. But the guy who was running Coast to Coast Radio back in the 80s and 90s, Art Bell, excuse me, was his name. And he had a purported Native American shaman on there who told him all about the shadow people and where they come from and who they are, and all the different kinds of shadow people. And that's where that really got traction. So somewhere in the early 90s, Art Bell did this on Coast to Coast Radio, this, I don't know, probably hour-long session with this guy. And then the next thing you know, everybody's calling and sending him drawings and, oh my gosh, I feel validated. Somebody saw what I saw, kind of thing. So then that took off. And then there was a lady who wrote a book about it called Heidi Hollis, who actually wrote a couple of books about the shadow people. Who said, oh, no, they're aliens. They're bad. They're evil. Oh, my God, they're going to come kill us all and take over our planet.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
Mine aren't aliens, so there.
Right. So there are a number of conspiracy theories out there about these things, and nobody really can say exactly what they are. But I think human beings, being what we are and having the imaginations that we have, it doesn't surprise me that things like that can happen.
No, and the fun thing about it is it's one of those things that's universal too. Like you talk to somebody in another country and they'll report the same sort of thing.
Yes, there are stories about shadow people from all over the world, going back thousands of years. H.P.
Lovecraft had them where he would wake up with a figure over him. He called them night gaunts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when I found that out, that was kind of fun because he'd written a whole thing about them. So then I did a twist off of it in a different story. But what's fascinating is when I was doing some research for something, people were drawing them and putting them online. And a lot of them, it's very similar. The same thing is happening. Now mine's different. So when I get them, there was a person with a face standing over me and then they'd lunge for me. My poor husband, I would backpedal across the bed and like shriek, slam into him. And so at some point he would just wrap his arms around and pull me in and then he'd just pass right back out because he's a really good sleeper.
Yeah, my husband woke up one time and he said he witnessed me like just sit bolt upright in bed from a prone position. He's like, it was not a natural way to just come sitting up in bed. He said, I just sat bolt upright like something had a string and pulled me up out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the times that I was experiencing that, kind of freaked him out too.
I don't like them. I don't like them.
Well, because there's
actually a whole documentary on Netflix or something about these. Yeah.
Right. Because they're creepy and they, and like, how do you get rid of it?
Yeah, you don't.
I'm with you. Whenever I've had anything like that happen, it's always a very well-defined, has a face.
Yeah.
It's a person.
Like at one point, sometimes I could say what it was wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was
the Hat Man will often be dressed in a 3-piece suit.
I want mine to be that natty.
The last
mine was in a flannel last time.
It was a man, and he told me to stop looking at him.
Like
he was big.
Then get out of my room.
He was a big guy. He was a very big guy. He had long hair, was pulled back in a ponytail. I think he might have had a beard. I can't remember that part for sure. And he was very jovial, in a very good mood. And he just looked right in my eye and said, "Stop looking at me."
Jesus, dude.
It's like, okay.
Get out of my space. I won't let you
stay out of my dreams, stay out of my room, and I will.
I did the same thing. I would sit there and stare at it, trying to figure out what it really was.
Right.
Did I have to, was that near the coat rack or whatever, stuffed animal, blood. I'm like, what is that? What are you? You're not what you look like. What are you? And I think the same thing. I think I just bored them away because I just stared and trying to figure out what they were.
Yeah, like that's the thing is I just look at them until they'd lunge. And it was that
I never had one
sit me backwards.
Yeah, I never had one lunge at me, luckily. I'm not sure what I would have done there.
Did either of you watch the TV show Evil?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a point on there where she's seeing she's seeing something very similar to this in her sleep, So she does something to prove to herself whether she's awake or asleep.
Well, doesn't she do
Doesn't
lucid
she put a
dreaming or
sign?
something? Yeah.
She puts a sign up and she's like, because if you're awake, you can read the sign. But if you're asleep, you can't read.
Oh.
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
But she prepared something in advance. So when this thing appeared to her, she could look at this thing she had set up and immediately know, yes, I'm dreaming, or yes, I'm awake.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember exactly what it was, but the thing did not react well to it. I remember not like being thwarted. So
No.
Yeah, there was Hubby and I were roommates at one point in time with another person in a mobile home park, and the kitchen was haunted by a shadow man with red eyes that people visiting commented that they saw.
Oh yeah, I would love the ones that are, when I was a preteen, probably, I had different friends who didn't know each other. Because, for example, I had a friend who had moved here before me from Maryland. She lived in Black Forest. She went to whatever school up there. Then I had friends from my own school, and they kept seeing the same little girl in my room.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating because they'd tell me about it. And then once like a couple did it who didn't know each other, I was like, okay, so there's a little girl in my room. Then. She had a whole
when
background
people
and
come
everything.
into your house and tell you what they're seeing in your house, it's kind of disconcerting.
That house was insanely haunted. Like, I don't know what the deal was. It's not too far from where I live now, but it just, everybody saw stuff there, and including us, so maybe it was all there were 5 of us kids, so that's a lot of negative energy.
Yeah. And there's no definitive answer for shadow people. They just seem to be there.
Right. So either it's all in our minds, or there's really shadow people.
Yeah. Some people say they're interdimensional beings that are trying to make contact from another dimension. I mean, there's just so many theories.
Well, then they should make a sign. Hello, I am from the such and such dimension. I just wanted to say hey.
Because I just have to assume, since you haven't made a sign, you have, subversive motives for, showing yourself here. So
that's right.
Or if they could remove eggs,
that would be handy.
Hello, my name is you as a agent.
Yeah. So if it's somebody's long lost brother, you could go, oh, okay, now I know who you are. What the fuck are you talking to me for? I guess because I'm the one who can see you.
Well, that's right. I have so many stories. We have so many stories. But when I was a kid, my dad was traveling a lot. He was NSA, so we couldn't even know where he was. And we lived in this apartment. And this was either when my oldest brother was a baby, because I'm the oldest of 5, or before he was there. I don't remember. So we're in this apartment, and something used to talk to me there all the time from under my bed and threaten me, basically. But the thing is, like at one point I shrieked for my mom because it talked to me, and she came in and she saw something moving away. And she moved me into her room that night, and we sat there while this shadow moved around the room all night.
Wow.
So she wasn't a happy camper.
It was
creepy.
Day.
Right? It's just this crappy. I almost got that was the apartment I lived in, where some dude walked around with a Polaroid of me that he'd taken when I was outside, because we had a little swing set down at the bottom of the apartments. Mm-hmm. And he knocked on our door and said, "Hey, have you seen my daughter? I was told she is in one of these apartments." And I walk and say something to my mom. It's like Terminator 2, when it's like because somebody comes and talks to the stepmom when she's in there, or the foster mom or whatever. That was kind of me. I walked up to say something behind the door. Mom just had it open a crack, and it was like put her hand over my mouth behind the door where this man is standing in front of it holding a Polaroid of me saying I was his child.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first near kidnapping.
Oh God.
That was like first of 3. But yeah, that like the whole sitting there and both of us watching the same shadows move around the room was creepy.
So predators, living and dead, are attracted to you.
Absolutely. Something about me. It's my aura. Aura.
Good, great. That's nuts.
It is nuts. All right.
Too much.
Yeah, but it was normal and it was accepted in our family because my dad was a total skeptic. And then he saw something for the first time, woke up. My mom woke up to something floating over her. And my dad woke up and saw it too. And then he was like, okay, I guess I'll believe you now, Barb.
Yeah, my husband was a total skeptic about a lot of things until he witnessed the UFO fly over our house.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It's like he likes to go outside and smoke because I don't smoke anymore. So, and he was in the front yard smoking, and he saw this triangle shaped craft moving completely silently through the sky, very low altitude, over our front yard and then over our house, and he like comes tearing through the house door. Oh my god, you gotta see this, oh my god. And by the time we got to the back, it had disappeared.
So creepy.
That was, I mean, MB's been in my house from the front door to the back door, from the living room through the dining room,
Yeah, it's not that far. No.
It's not far. So, and by the time he got out the back door, it was gone. Disappeared. It was not there anywhere.
I will say, my husband, while a skeptic who hadn't experienced anything weird before, he's never not believed me.
Mm-hmm.
He's nice in that he doesn't think I'm a crazy person.
That's always nice to know that your spouse doesn't think you're insane. Yeah.
That's right. But yeah, I think at a certain point, like he came around, my son used to be able to see auras or whatever. And he'd just tell us, sometimes that person has such and such colors around him. And I'd be like, what color does that person have? What color does that person have? And then he grew out of it. But he was freaky. His sleep was freaky. He would see owls in his room and bubbles. So orbs, he'd call them bubbles. The bubbles are floating around my room again, Mom.
Yeah.
And then he had an owl that would watch him or whatever, which around here wouldn't be that rare, but it's not like, but it was in his room.
I was going to say, but in the house.
In the room.
It's the in the room with you thing. That's a little, creepy.
Yeah. I ended up moving my father-in-law's ashes into his room.
Oh, wow.
And it improved. So
Good.
I figure his grandpa could protect him. Like, here. Just so he didn't know what it was, my son, and I was like, we're just going to put this in your room on this shelf. But yeah, like that kid, he could creep me out in the middle of the night, like nobody's business, until my daughter came along. And then she's just creepy. It wasn't even ghosts for her, although she would talk to something all night. I would sit there and listen to her, just talk to it. She would look at it and talk to it. My sister babysat once and I had a rocking chair in her room, and she walked in and the rocking chair was just going. And she was like, I'm not babysitting for you anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, just because you were little when we lived in the haunted house, you've already been through it. But yeah, there's lots of stuff. So
yeah, it's like this. I've always told my kids that there's, this world is a projection of what, is in your head. And so if you have control over everything in it.
Yeah.
So if you don't want the thing bothering you, you don't want to talk to it anymore, tell it to kick bricks, hit the road.
Kick bricks.
Yeah, I've never heard that. Kick bricks.
No.
So, that's it. And I think if you do that with conviction, it works.
I'm always curious. Who are you? What are you? Where'd you come from?
No, you
Why
don't.
are you talking to
That's
me?
like the first big no-no you learn when you look it up is don't engage in conversation.
But that's
you,
me.
You invite it in.
I know that's me. That's my, why are you here?
Don't do it.
I would like
Don't
to
need to
interview
do
you,
that.
Mr. Shadow Man. What?
Right?
You might as well tell me don't breathe.
I mean, if you want the ghost to make you not breathe,
No, I don't want that, but
then don't talk to it.
fine.
I'll tell you now.
All accounts usually agree that, it's not a good idea to hold a conversation with these things.
No.
They do interpret that as an invitation, apparently.
Perhaps that's what I've been doing wrong all this time.
Maybe.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so
Well, that's the shadow people.
Yeah. Awesome. Mine has so it has some of the standard supernatural, but it's demon related. All right. So I'm doing the exorcism of Roland Doe. And this is the story that the Exorcist was based on. This is what inspired William Peter Blatty. All right. So my sources, all that's interesting, St. Mary's University Scholars and Wikipedia. In the late 1940s, newspapers, including the Washington Post, printed a story about a couple of priests who had performed exorcism rituals on a young boy. They didn't give his name. He was always Roland Doe. William Peter Blatty heard about it, and he wrote a story that was published in 1971 based on this story. The true story is a bit different. Obviously, I've said Roland Doe, not Reagan. So it was not a girl. The victim of demonic possession was a 14-year-old boy. His name has been kept quiet, like I said, but it's been proposed that it was a boy named Ronald Hunkeler. And since that's not confirmed, I'm going to call him Roland throughout this. But he was called Roland, Ronald, and Robbie between the sources. So people will just have to forgive me if I missed something where I said Ronald instead of Roland. All right. The story begins in Cottage City, Maryland in January 1949. 14-year-old Roland was close with his aunt. She was a spiritualist who introduced him to the occult and taught him how to use a Ouija board. So when she died, he tried contacting her through the Ouija board to help with his grief. And instead, it's thought that he drew something else to him through that Ouija board. Roland started hearing scratching in his walls throughout the night. His mattress would shake, water dripped down his walls and then would be gone. Scratches appeared on his body. His family heard strange sounds too, so it wasn't just him. They actually saw the furniture moving, items levitating, that sort of thing, when he was near them. He would appear to go into a trance. He'd speak with a guttural voice that wasn't like his at all. And this only ever happened at night. During the day, Roland had no issues. Everything was normal. He was doing his normal thing. And then at night, I guess, everything would go to shit. The family was German Lutheran, and they went to their pastor, whose name was Luther Miles Schultz. It's thought that he was the source for the articles. In addition to being a pastor, he had a personal interest in parapsychology. So after talking to the family about the haunting occurring, he invited Roland to stay in his home overnight so he could witness it for himself. And he also got to see moving furniture and other household objects floating. At this point, figuring he was over his head, he told the family to seek out a Catholic priest, because often a priest isn't going to think ghosts, really. They're going to think demon. The first Catholic priest to attempt an exorcism on Roland was Edward Hughes. He's supposed to have attempted the exorcism at Georgetown University Hospital. There was some debate on that, on whether he was ever there, but then I saw that supposedly Roland was there for a week. And so it happened during that time. During this exorcism, the word Louis appeared on the skin of the boy's abdomen. He would scream and shrink away whenever a crucifix or holy item was held up to him. Before the rite could be finished, Roland freed one of his hands and tore a spring out of his mattress, which he used to strike the priest with. Father Hughes, then he was unable to finish the exorcism. He was done. Roland's mother was from St. Louis, Missouri, and she took the writing on his abdomen to mean she should return home to be with family and seek help there. A family member spoke with his professor about the situation, her professor, it was a cousin, and the professor, Father Raymond J. Bishop, introduced the family to William S. Bowdern. When they paid a visit to the family together, they also observed the phenomenon of moving furniture and levitating objects, so they put in a request to the Archbishop to perform an exorcism, and it was approved. You know, in the movies, they make it sound really hard to get that approval. Mm-hmm. The priest first tried the exorcism in the family home in St. Louis. It went on for weeks, with them fighting to exorcise the demon each night. An X was etched into his skin at one point, which they took to mean that he was possessed by 10 demons. Red markings, there's a lot of extrapolation happening.
Yeah.
Red markings appeared elsewhere in his body, including a pitchfork patterned one on his thigh, which I thought that one was funny. Like the whole cartoon Satan with his pitchfork. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that was biblical. It reached a head on March 20th, still the same year, 49, where it escalated so badly that Roland's parents felt he should be in a hospital. This time, the exorcism occurred in the psychiatric wing at the Alexian Brothers Hospital during a thunderstorm, no less. That was the final one. It was April 18th. The priest asked for assistance from Father Walter Halloran and Father William Van Roo. So there were 4 Jesuit priests in the room. So it wasn't just an old one and a young one. It's actually from Bishop's journals that most of the information about this, about the whole exorcism and the paranormal events that happened, were pulled. During the exorcism, words were repeatedly etched into Roland's skin. His mattress shook during the litany of the saints. He screamed in Latin and said offensive things, including sexually inappropriate things. It should be noted here that one of the articles I don't know why it amused me so much, made a point of noting that he had not, in fact, masturbated with a crucifix like Reagan in the movie. And I was like, dude, nobody thought he had. But at one point, though, he managed to get in a hit that broke Father Halloran's nose. That morning, Roland had experienced seizures and he began screaming at the priest about Satan. This was the first that issues had existed during the day, and the priest worked at the exorcism, covering with crucifixes and rosaries. At 10:45 p.m., one of the priests called on St. Michael for his help. Together, the priests completed the exorcism, and within a few minutes, Roland began acting normally again. From all that's interesting, quote, the boy recounted how he had a vision that St. Michael vanquished Satan on a great battlefield. And so one of the sources said it was exactly 7 minutes after calling on St. Michael. But okay. I seem to recall 7 having a meaning biblically or something. So that's why I wanted to throw that in.
I say, like I know.
Yes. After this, Roland never had any problems again. He grew up, got married, and had kids of his own. He named his oldest son Michael after the saint who had saved his life. It's claimed that Father Hughes never fully recovered from the experience and that he seemed to exhibit signs of demonic possession himself. On his deathbed, it said he yelled awful things at his nurse and tried to strangle her. I call that dementia, Alzheimer's.
I was going to say that's not unusual for dementia patients.
No, I was like, really? That's what you're going to refer to? Give me examples from, the other 40 years or however old he was of his life.
Yeah.
In addition to the lack of crucifix masturbation, it was never claimed that his head spun around or that he vomited pea soup, nor did he reverse spider crawl down the stairs or any of the other crazy things that happen in the movie, just for the record, or the book. There are, of course, skeptics. Surprise. A 1993 book by Thomas B. Allen called Possessed, The True Story of an Exorcism stated that most experts now agree it was a sign of mental illness in the boy. Another author, Mark Opsasnik, feels Roland was just a creep acting out to get out of school. He feels the word carved into the skin were done by the boy when no one was looking, and that he was simply using Latin he'd heard the Jesuit priests say. Opsasnik actually interviewed friends and neighbors from Roland's childhood who said he loved to pull pranks and freak his mother out all the time. So this wouldn't necessarily be that out of the ordinary. It lasted 3 months. That's a lot of dedication for a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. A quote of his that I liked of Opsasnik's is, to psychiatrists, Rob Doe suffered from mental illness. To priests, this was a case of demonic possession. To writers and film video producers, this was a great story to exploit for profit. Those involved saw what they were trained to see. Each purported to look at the facts, but just the opposite was true. In actuality, they manipulated the facts and emphasized information that fit their own agendas. It's true. I will say the mother, I didn't mention it earlier, but the parents did seek medical help, psychological help, and all of that, not just the priests. So they were trying to cover all their bases to see what was going on, because it sounds like their nights were pure hell for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because this kid would start freaking out and being weird. And there's a book that obviously had to have been inspired by this, Head Full of Ghosts by, is it Paul Tremblay? Yeah. And I thought it handled it really well. And it was really kind of dead on with this. But again, it's a teenage girl in his book. And there's so many elements in that book. I can't really say, or I give something away, but you're reading the book. And even at the end, you're wondering, was this girl possessed?
Yes.
Was it that the priests was doing this for attention? Was it that the priest made it worse? It's actually a really good book, I think.
It was the presence of the videographer.
Yeah.
Was that making it worse?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really good book if you like kind of exorcism type things, but doing the actual research on Roland, I was like, oh, I see, Paul. But, yeah, good book. And that is the story of the exorcism of Roland Doe, whoever he was.
Well, I think if you have any kind of, if you have some kind of fairly significant mental illness going on, when you start bringing in priests and people that are telling you that you're demonically possessed and whatnot, and you're already off balance.
Yep.
Doesn't take too much to push you further over the edge.
No. And there's the story then of the girl, and I don't remember her name because I don't remember if it's the same as the movie that was made about it, but that actually was killed through the exorcism rites. And I think that there were actually charges pressed and all of that. I want to do that story at some point, but I mean, it should have been hard for them to get it approved to do something like this, because often it was strapping down this child usually, right? And so they're not eating, they're not drinking, they have whatever mental illness or, whatever issue they have. And it's just being exacerbated by the things that are being done. So yeah, creepy in itself.
There's also, if you like Exorcist stories, My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix.
Yeah.
That's really good. And it has, now that doesn't purport to be a true story.
No, and I don't Head Full of Ghosts didn't either.
No. But the whole, the priest being willing to go to these extremes to get rid of the demon, that's really well portrayed in here.
Mm-hmm.
In My Best Friend's Exorcist.
The Exorcist is an awesome book, but it's it's taking very seriously the demon aspect of it, right? Pazuzu or whatever. It's not these newer books that examine the damage done and by the belief that it's a demonic possession. I really enjoy those.
Yeah.
It's been a million years since I read The Exorcist. I did read it.
I read it in one day. Like, that's how good it was. So
I'm pretty sure I was too young to read it when I read it.
Probably.
I think I was too.
I was not when I read that one. I mean, I was reading plenty of horror way too early, but I didn't actually read The Exorcist until well after I'd seen the movie and all of that. And I was in my early 20s because I can still remember we lived in a fourplex, actually not too far from where I live now, up near the quarry. So yeah, because I remember I just laid in bed all day. It was a Saturday and Jeff wasn't home or something like that. And so I read it because I remember switching positions as the light changed in my window, because we had this big window right behind the bed. And so I just remember having to change, but that's all I did all day, just totally lost in the book. And that's why I remember reading it, because it's a nice experience. It's not that long. I mean, it is a novel. It's not a novelette or anything, but it's not long. It's not when you're used to reading Stephen King anyway.
True.
But a few hours, I don't know. It was dark by the time I was done, but who knows what time I started. All right.
I do not know.
Well, we need to ask our question.
That's right. We do.
I wrote it down. All right. So the question that'll be posted this week is simply, have you ever seen a ghost? So we want to hear people's ghost stories. And you can send in any story that you want to, whether it has to do with ghosts or not, if you want to mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. You can submit it on the form on our website, which is mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. Feel free to send us stories, folks, and then we'll read them on here. And thank you so much for coming on here and telling us about your shadow people.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you too.
All right. Bye, everybody. And thank you for listening.
We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye. So I should have done more
on it.
I should have done more vocal warm-up exercises. Mimi Mamo Moo. The deputy director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Serious as shit. I can't say anything today.
Take a moment. Take a breath.
Okay. Edit that. I'm going to do this again and I'm going to do it right.
I will do that.
And Kim's like, wow, what drugs are you on today?
Yeah, I know you.
Or as my daughter would say, what smoke are you cracking? Hey,
like it.
The deputy director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, ta-da, said,
I have to edit it out. So Justin Tuning could be ta-da after you read it. Now I'm leaving it in.
I'm gonna have to say it again. It's never.
Get your shit together.
That's like saying calm down. Has that ever worked?
Calm your tits.
Okay. Okay.
That one's bouncing all over the place. It breaks so fast. So fast.
La 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 la. Okay. So the people in charge of the investigation in Tennessee.
I'm gonna laugh throughout a murder story and people are gonna think I'm really sick, like more than I already was. Redhead found this body. I'm gonna drink some water.
Please do.
Proceed.
She's telling me to calm down. Okay. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
Well done.
I'm going to skip saying that altogether. Okay, so
The
I'm just
Tennessee
gonna
Bureau of
say,
Investigation.
the people in charge in Tennessee don't want it to be, they said it was not a serial murderer.